So I had just shared a short from paternity court. All right, just gonna make some commentary on it so that way people can understand exactly how consent works. All right. Now, ultimately, it pertains to you, no matter how you identify, no matter what sexuality, no matter what gender, no matter race, religion, does not matter. All right. If you are sexually active in any way, shape, or form, all right, other than self gratification, all right, because if you're self gratifying, obviously you're able to give yourself consent, all right. We are talking anything that would involve consent from an, an outside party, all right. In the clip, she clarified the factor that he was married. He admitted to it, all right, and he admitted that he told her. And she said, yeah, but you told me after. All right. That right there. That was a big no no on his end. All right. Ultimately, by not revealing the information that he was married before having any type of sexual encounter, ultimately, he removed her capability of being able to give informed consent. All right. Informed consent is any information that would have changed somebody's willingness to engage in a sexual encounter, all right? Whether it be by omitting information or by providing false information, all right? So, like, say, for example, all right? Like, say, for example, there was somebody that was trying to pursue me, all right? And they were in their 50s, or they claimed that they were in their 50s, all right? Or they claimed that they were in their 30s somewhere, all right? But they were realistically in their 50s, all right? Ultimately, I would not have been able to go ahead and be able to give informed consent because ultimately they ended up giving false information that would have ended up changing the determination of whether I would have been willing to engage in a sexual encounter. All right? So, another factor that ends up going ahead and playing into that. Like, say, for example, if somebody has a sexually transmitted disease, all right, and they know that they have a sexually transmitted disease, but they choose not to go ahead and tell that information until either during or after any form of sexual intercourse. All right? Ultimately, that by the letter of the law would actually be considered chemical warfare. Like, it's actually illegal to go ahead and knowingly have a sexually transmitted disease and not tell the person until either during intercourse or after intercourse, or to not go ahead and relay that information because that's information that would go ahead and change my willingness to give consent to a sexual encounter. All right? So ultimately, that, he ended up going ahead and removing her ability to be able to consent because of the factor that he did not tell her that she was married, that he was married. So because of that, she wouldn't be able to properly give consent. All right? Because ultimately, what he was keeping from her was information that could change the entire trajectory of her life. You know? I didn't know you were married, otherwise, I wouldn't have slept with you. All right? Because ultimately, what's the side effects of that? Now I've got somebody's spouse trying to go ahead, trying to hunt me down, trying to go scorched earth, all because of the factor that, while wanting to engage in a sexual encounter with me, you left that information out. Information that could have potentially caused an outside party that has some form of mutually agreed upon, uh, you know, agreement when it comes to sex. All right, which marriage, that's considered that a marriage contract. All right. But then he ended up saying, before talking about, support and everything, needed to clarify that there's been no form of DNA paternity test, you know? So that's putting the buggy before the horse, you know? So then the judge ends up asking, you know, did you get DNA tests to, verify that he is the father? She said, not that she's aware of. All right. She ended up asking, did he sign the birth certificate, when he was born? Like when the child was born. She said, he was there, not there at the birth. All right. So what that means is that ultimately he didn't sign the birth certificate. So because, which by the way, it is not illegal to withhold signing a birth certificate until paternity is established. All right. If anything, when going to make a child support petition, that is the process. That's the state mandated process, regardless of which state you're in. It actually helps prevent paternity fraud. So ultimately, him not signing that birth certificate until paternity test is done, that is him saying, I am not saying that I am willing to withhold support. I am not saying that I am not willing to be there for my child if it is my child. But I am not going to agree by signing this contract, this birth certificate, to be there for said child or give any form of support unless it is established biologically that it is my obligation. All right? And now understand, there needs to be a high enough percentage when it comes to genetic testing to establish that it is guaranteed said person's child. All right? So, like, let's say, for example, a paternity test gets done and someone tries to put me on the hook for, like, let's say, for example, my cousin's child support. All right? And biologically, there's enough of a gap to go ahead and establish, hey, someone in your family is potentially, the parent of said child, but you yourself are not parent to said child. That right there ends up going ahead and opening up enough cause to even, for example, even contest marriage if it was a marriage, because that would establish infidelity, which ultimately would end up going ahead and, whether being in a state that has a no fault or at fault divorce would automatically change it over to a at fault divorce with the unfaithful party being the one that is at fault. And that ultimately the damages would end up having to go ahead and be calculated and estimated. How long did you know? How far did it go? How much ended up getting lost in the process? How many opportunities did you prevent them from, being able to strive for? All of that plays a role.